Hello there, it is Laura again with another episode of Financial Fun Friday, and today we are going to talk about what's my interest rate. That is not an easy question that I can answer for you on a video. That has to be something that we talk about individually because just like your test results from a doctor's office, every interest rate is different for every person because it is based on your situation. And just like the doctor's office, each lender is probably going to be showing you a different rate. And we will talk about that here in a minute, kind of how to discern that difference so that you're comparing apples to apples. So the biggest factor in your interest rate is your credit score. And so that is going to drive you to whatever loan program you're going to be using, as well as what your interest rate is. So the lower your credit score, the higher your interest rate is going to be. And that's just kind of the nature of it. We also sometimes get into a situation where we have a kind of maximum interest rate that we can do for you, so that you may have to bring some extra closing costs if that interest rate is high is lower than you would be able to get just without extra costs. So that is the biggest factor in your interest rate. Other things also affect it a little less minorly, and that's things like your loan amount and your loan to value. So if you're able to put a full 20% down, that's going to look different than it is if you are doing 10% down, that kind of a thing. So that's going to affect your rate, not as drastically as your credit score, but it also does factor in. Your debt to income ratio will also factor. So if you have a very, very high debt to income ratio, it may make your interest rate just a tick or two higher. It just kind of, again, depends on your situation. So when you're shopping for an interest rate, you need to make sure that you're comparing the same thing. So for example, I had a gentleman call the office yesterday and he was quoted a 3.75 interest rate. And when I pulled it up on my system, I could give him 4.375. We got to talking a little bit, and that original quote, it was a lower rate, but they were charging him almost $3,000 for that rate. My 4.375 was at a no extra cost sort of situation. So he was able to kind of look, and I could get him the 3.75 for the 3,000, but we had to make sure that we were comparing the same thing because at first glance my rate seemed quite a bit higher than the other bank was quoting him. So just make sure, and again, I'm happy to sit down and talk with you about your situation. Please call or text me if you are just starting to look at that and want to kind of get an idea of what range your interest rate might be in. They are still quite a bit lower than they were this time last year, so it's still a great time to buy or refinance. I'd be happy to talk with you about that. Have a great week.